a long time, like all of us here, I think, you know. And as a player, I was labeled a quota player for a long time. And I've earned hard and worked hard to earn my own respect in this game. So I'm not going to be patronized by two individuals that have played in an apartheid, a segregated era, and come and want to undermine, you know. And so I think for me, I've had my fair share. I can't work with people that undermine other people. And you know, you can sit and you can laugh about it,
I'm not laughing about
but you know exactly what happened. It's fine. It's fine. I don't mind it being ridiculous. I'm glad it happens on air so people can see. Because you two sit here. No, it's fine.
Well, that's unfortunate because...
Well, that's how we start this part of Sports of the Full View tonight. And the clip that shook TV for obvious reasons. The SA Human Rights Commission are said to be in the process to conduct a formal and public inquiry into the allegations of racism at Broadcaster SuperSport and investigate the circumstances which led to former Springbok Ashwin Willemse walking off set, as you saw there during a live broadcast in May this year. The inquiry is set for Feb next year. Now we are joined by Advocate Nqobizitha Mlilo, Ashwin Willemse's legal representative in studio. Mlilo, welcome to the program. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know Ashwin would have liked to be with us, but family commitments this time of the year.
Yeah.
Just catch us up to speed. We saw that clip. It went viral both locally and internationally for obvious reasons. Take us just maybe a step back, just brief us on how this started and where we are as it is right now.
Well, I think it's what you've just shown, the clip you've just shown on TV is what Ashwin considers to have been what broke the camel's back, as it were. It has been a series of events in which Ashwin has felt that the institution of SuperSport acted in a manner that infringed his right to dignity, and the conduct of SuperSport in infringing his right to dignity is one rooted in racism. So this is really what this case is about. You would know that there was some form of investigation that was done by Advocate Vincent Maleka SC, and Ashwin did not participate in that process for two reasons. One, which is a question of substance, that Ashwin was an independent contractor at SuperSport. He was not an employee of SuperSport, and therefore we did not think that it was appropriate to subject him to a process which resembled a disciplinary hearing when in fact he was not an employee. Then the second issue was that of process, which is the manner in which Advocate Vincent Maleka was going to proceed. He was going to interview people that he singularly considered relevant for the purposes of his investigation and speak to them in silo. In other words, we would not be able to know what it is that he would have gathered from those people, and then he would then make his own findings from there. So we thought that the whole process did not lend itself to finding an investigation, or for that matter a conclusion, which is sound both in fact and in law.
Let's start then right there. The fact that a lot of people were saying that Mr. Willemse did not attend the so-called DC, as it were, as you put it. Therefore, why is he complaining? He could have gone there to state his case. And I know we've spoken to you in the past about that very point. Just refresh us. The reason why you thought, as his legal advice, not to.
We thought that the process had a predetermined outcome. In fact, it was a process which was designed to chlorinate and saninate what SuperSport had done. And therefore, it did not have the procedural and the substantive institutional mechanism to produce a result which is fair. And at the preliminaries, we made a submission to Advocate Vincent Maleka that we did not think that he was the appropriate forum to handle the matter, and therefore he must refer the matter to the South African Human Rights Commission. At the time, that suggestion was contemptuously viewed, and for some reason, we saw that recommendation now finally finding its way in the recommendations of Advocate Vincent Maleka. So the referral to the South African Human Rights Commission is not out of the benevolence of SuperSport. It is at the instance not only of Ashwin, but a clear legal demonstration that the forum was inappropriate.
The question is then, what do we think would have been predetermined from SuperSport's internal in-house investigation as compared to what you expect from the inquiry?
Yes, so SuperSport had conducted what they considered an investigation and came to a conclusion that there was no racism involved. Belatedly, they brought in Advocate Vincent Maleka, a celebrated lawyer in South Africa, a black lawyer, and you know, of respectful view, for the reasons I've given, we did not think that he possessed both the substantive and procedural institutional capacity to come to a fair decision. Now, taking the matter to a forum, either the South African Human Rights Commission or the Equality Court would make the process subject, for instance, that the witnesses would be subject to cross-examination, and the evidence that they give would be tested, and people who would then give evidence would then give evidence.
And that's what you've always asked for as well,
Yes.
to be able to test the
Absolutely.
you know, what the alleged I don't call them perpetrators of racism, being Nas in this case, who was part of, as well as Nick Mallett's part of that panel. Now, take us to where we are right now.
Yeah.
I know past couple of weeks or last week it's set for hearings, or where are we?
Yeah, so since the report of Advocate Vincent Maleka, we have haggled between ourselves insofar as agreeing on the terms of reference that the South African Human Rights Commission would use. And we seem to have come to some form of agreement on what constitutes an appropriate terms of reference. And fortunately, the South African Human Rights Commission has in fact broadened the inquiry to include anyone else who might have felt that they were subjected to similar circumstances.
Because I'm reading some of them right now,
Yes.
whether and what extent did Mr. Willemse was exposed or subjected to unfair racial discrimination before and by that time of the year. So it's fairly wide open, isn't it?
It's fairly wide open. So the matter is not only about Ashwin Willemse now. It includes anyone else who might have worked at SuperSport who might have been subjected to similar treatment. Yeah. So the peculiar issue about this case is that for the first time in South African law, as far as we can figure out, this is the first time where subtle racism, unspoken racism, or some form of an intangible way in which racism is done has now come before a judicial process or a quasi-judicial process. In the past, we have heard where the K word is used, or blatant racism. In this case, it's in the conduct, in the manner in which you treat someone in a manner that infringes their dignity, which in that process being informed by a deep-rooted. So we think that this is an important contribution not only to the jurisprudence of South Africa, but to the Black African child.
Something very interesting, because just a couple of days ago we saw the Human Rights Commission of South Africa come out and say, look, this is what we've been dealing with for the whole year.
Yes.
And most of what they're speaking about with the inclusion of the K word are those subtleness or parts of racism where some could say, but I didn't say anything.
Yes.
That smirk, that somebody who's not, at the end of it will not understand what it means, which is what Ashwin has been saying behind that, because a lot of people came out and said, maybe he's being a baby.
Yes.
But if you've not been at the back end of that, you'll never understand. And that's what Ashwin has been saying, is that he's been suffering through that for all this time.
Yes, and it's the first time, like I've said, as far as I know, where we have to find a way of constitutionalizing or coining it in legal language in a manner that makes constitutional legal sense, to say that your conduct, although it is not quite openly racist, amounts to racism. So this process allows that process to say, how do we coin the legal system, or how do we create a precedent in law that people who are subjected to subtle forms of racism, intangible racism, are able to make a claim in law and base that claim in law on the constitutional right to dignity.
Where's Ashwin right now? What space is he in right now? We know he's a strong person. We were showing some of the clip, some of Ashwin's story, some of the overlay now. He's had a long journey. I mean, we know him as a strong human being, but where is he? What space is he right now?
Well, he's in a space where, in the afternoon today, he was saying that he has had a lot of physical battles on his physical body. In rugby, he has had a lot of injuries. But this is a different kind of injury. It's an injury that is emotional, it's an injury that is psychological. And he considers that this is an opportunity for him and to bring to the fore what every other black person who might have been in a similar position is suffering, so that this issue can now be fully ventilated. There are a lot of black professionals who are in corporates who might be subjected to a similar, to say, whatever Ashwin has suffered in this episode, let it give courage to everyone else in a similar position to say it is a battle worth fighting. There has been personal sacrifices on him. He has lost quite a lot, both financially and otherwise.
Because that's the question. That's what the leading question to that. The people who were involved in this, for example, Nick Mallett and Nas, are back in the office. We're seeing them day in and day out on television. Ashwin, though, is not back at work.
That's the point we are making, to say this is the systemic racism that we're talking about, to say there is a matter that is live, where the outcomes of both your internal investigation and the investigation of Advocate Vincent Maleka is under contest, and you proceed as if nothing has happened. And this is exactly the point that we are making, to say it is in the conduct of these institutions, these corporate institutions, that make the pain of black people almost a non-issue, that, as you put it, you are a crybaby. So this represents an important opportunity to find a way of creating the law to say, if this happens, this is how a judicial process, a quasi-judicial process, a disciplinary hearing, or a grievance procedure within a company or an employment environment, this is how you attend to issues of subtle racism. You would notice that in the recommendations of Advocate Vincent Maleka, there have been certain aspects of it that have already been implemented at SuperSport. As to how far that would go, it's something, obviously, the future will tell. But I can't emphasize enough that this is an extremely important opportunity where South African law has now been faced with a situation where subtle racism is now on the... We have that Durban situation of that lady where you use the K word. That's blatant. You can say you said X, and that amounts to hate speech, or that amounts to racism. Now, we have to find a legal construct of how do you legalize a subtle conduct. And having done that, how do you go to a judicial process, a disciplinary hearing, a grievance procedure, a South African Human Rights Commission, the Quality Court, and articulate it legally?
Yeah, we're running out of time. Quickly, February, it sits, the inquiry, as it were. Just take us, obviously, I'm assuming that we're taking this, you are taking this, and when I say we, yourself and Ashwin Willemse, going all the way with this one. In February begins. Just take us through the process.
Well, the process, fortunately, I think the most important issue to highlight is that the inquiry is open to the public. Anyone who wants to come and see can come and see or observe the proceedings. There will be an opportunity to cross-examine. Ashwin will tell his side of the story, and we hope people will also get courage to come and say their side of the story. We are determined to take this issue all the way, if it is necessary, to Braamfontein, to the Constitutional Court. It's an extremely important issue. It is important that the law be very clear around how these issues are dealt with. The right to dignity is an extremely important constitutional right which permeates all the rights. So it is extremely important that we see this thing through.
Advocate Nqobizitha Mlilo, thank you very much for joining us. Advocate for, Ashwin Willemse, speaking to us about the issue. Well, we all saw it, we all read about it, we all saw Ashwin Willemse walk off set, of course, saying racism was a factor at SuperSport. As we said earlier, the SA Human Rights Commission will conduct a formal and public inquiry into the allegations of racism at SuperSport. As the advocate has just said, everyone's open to it, and they can go, if they work at SuperSport, if they think they've experienced it, they can join in and head their side of the story.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.